They left on a Friday. Zane Miller and Alina Cruz, 32 and 28 partners for 4 years, engaged for one. Their destination, Nevada's Black Rock Desert, a quick weekend escape from San Francisco's chaos. Just the two of them, a rented Jeep, and an excuse to go offline. Zane had packed his Nikon, Alina her journal. They wanted stars without light pollution, silence without sirens, and the feeling of being small again. They never came back. It wasn't supposed to be anything risky. They told friends they'd be home by Sunday night. Zane had a client meeting Monday morning. Alina had work at the yoga studio. But when Sunday passed without a text, no calls, no updates, people assumed they were just unplugged. Monday came, then Tuesday, still nothing. By Wednesday, calls to their phones went straight to voicemail. The signal last pinged off a tower near Gerlich after that radio silence. Friends filed a missing persons report. The Jeep was traced to a rental agency in Reno, picked up on Friday morning. Credit cards showed a gas stop just past Fernley, a snack run at a roadside mart. Then, nothing. No more purchases. No highway camera footage. No sightings. It was as if the desert had swallowed them whole. Authorities launched a limited search. Black Rock stretches over 10 square miles of dry lake beds and jagged volcanic rock. There were no tracks, no tire impressions, no broken branches, just wind. The kind that moves over sand and deletes everything behind it. A ranger found an empty water bottle miles from the nearest trail. Same brand the couple had bought at the mart. It was bagged as evidence, though no one could say for sure it was theirs. Speculation spun fast. Maybe they ran out of gas and got lost. Maybe they argued, separated, something happened, or something else entirely. The couple wasn't reckless. They'd camped before. But Black Rock wasn't a national park, it was wilderness, barren, unforgiving, with temperatures that spike past 100 in the day and plunge below 40 at night. 7 days in, the search was scaled back. With no new leads, no movement, no signals, the couple was declared missing, presumed deceased. But then a new clue surfaced that hadn't been there before. An Instagram post. It appeared on Alina's account at 6:17 p.m., timestamped Saturday, the day after they left. The image was a selfie, Alina in the foreground, her hair windblown, eyes squinting against the setting sun. Zane was just behind her, grinning, slightly off-center. Behind them, a trailhead sign, partially obscured, bleached by sun. The background stretched far desert plains, faint hills, and a sky caught in that golden blue moment right before dusk. It was stunning and wrong. No one had cell service out there. The location tag said, "Nowhere." Comments had just started to trickle in, friends complimenting the view, some asking when they'd be back. Then nothing. No replies. Investigators traced the post's metadata. It was uploaded via cellular, not Wi-Fi, which raised a question. Where exactly had they been able to send it from? A local tech analyst mapped out signal ranges. There were pockets of weak coverage near the southern edge of the desert, mostly from distant ranch towers. Not enough for video, but enough for one photo. Maybe, if you stood still, if the wind didn't shift, that meant the couple had been somewhere within a narrow corridor, a 9-mile zone near Dry Lake Ridge. A ranger was dispatched to hike the zone. He found the sign in the photo. Half buried in sand, nailed to a cracked post, it read, "Trail 34, no motor vehicles beyond this point." The same sign, the angle matched, so did the ridgeline, and scattered around the base of the sign were boot prints, 2 sets, close together, then diverging. They had been there. And the camera, Zane's Nikon, missing. So was Alina's bag. But a single item was found tucked under a rock nearby. A folded note, warped by sun. No signature, no fingerprints. Just 5 words in faint ink, smeared slightly from moisture. "We walked past the line." The authorities didn't know what that meant, but to the families, it was worse than a goodbye. It was a message from the other side of logic. Because in Black Rock Desert, there was no line, no border. No fence, nothing to walk past. Unless the couple had found something no one else was meant to see. It was found by accident. A month after the couple vanished, a Bureau of Land Management ranger patrolling a restricted zone near Dry Lake Ridge spotted a glint of metal off the trail sunlight bouncing off a side mirror half covered in dust. The vehicle sat at an awkward angle, front wheels dipped into a shallow depression. It was the rented Jeep Wrangler, Nevada plates, dust-blown, sun-scorched, unmoved. The doors were unlocked. Inside, an open bag of trail mix spilled across the passenger seat. 2 water bottles, half full, a sun hat curled from heat. Zane's denim jacket lay draped over the back seat. Alina's hiking boots were tucked neatly beneath the dashboard. Everything looked paused, like they'd just stepped out for a moment and hadn't returned yet. But the keys were missing. So were their phones. There was no sign of damage, no forced entry, no blood, no broken glass. Even the tires were fully inflated, just dust and time. A single set of footprints led from the driver's side into the scrub brush, then vanished. There were no tracks coming back. A drone was flown over the area. Nothing, just endless desert rippling with heat waves. Investigators flagged the scene, photographed every angle, dusted for prints. Nothing out of the ordinary. No other human tracks. No signs of struggle. No obvious direction of travel. It was like they had vanished mid-sentence. Inside the glove box, they found a folded paper map with a thin red line drawn in pencil. It followed a road that wasn't marked, an old service track now reclaimed by the desert. It ended at a circle drawn in the margin, annotated with just one word: lookout? They scanned the area again. No lookout, no tower, no campsite. Just a sense that the Jeep had been parked, deliberately positioned out of sight from aerial view, just beyond the bend of a natural ridge. Not abandoned in a panic, but left behind with intention. Maybe even instructions. The case, already strange, had shifted into something else. No panic, no trauma. Just the eerie suggestion that Zane and Alina had walked willingly into a place no one else knew existed. And from that point on, the silence began. By the time the Jeep was found, the trail had already gone cold. Investigators subpoenaed phone records, combed through location data, bank statements, anything that might trace their movements beyond that final post. But everything stopped the night of June 3rd. Zane's phone pinged one last time near the ridge tower signal strength. 1 bar, time, 6:22 p.m. Then nothing. Alina's went dark minutes later. Both devices never reconnected. No app usage, no texts, not even failed attempts. As if they'd both powered off or been removed from service range simultaneously. Their credit cards showed no activity, no charges after the gas station outside Fernley, no ATM withdrawals, no hotel check-ins. Social media went silent too. Zane had been an occasional poster landscapes, espresso shots, the occasional snarky caption. Alina preferred story short bursts of soundtrack nature clips and yoga poses. But after the selfie at the trailhead, nothing. Not even views on their stories. Their digital presence flatlined. Investigators hoped for cloud backups, emergency calls, even accidental butt dials, but their devices were ghost no data transfers, no syncing, no logs. It was as if the moment they stepped beyond the ridge, the world stopped hearing them. Alina's sister tried tracking her location through a shared app. Location unavailable. Every time. Zane's email auto-response triggered 3 days later. Out of office, back Monday. Except Monday came and went. He never signed back in. Technicians dug into carrier logs, searching for any tower connections, even brief signal flutters. But there was nothing, not even a dropped call. Just that last ping and silence. As if they'd reached the edge of the map and stepped off. The digital void was more disturbing than any trail of breadcrumbs. People leave traces, they check weather, they call home, they Google landmarks. But Zane and Alina left nothing, no browser history, no drafts, no GPS check-ins. Just that one red circle on a paper map and a phone camera flash, caught seconds before they disappeared. The deeper the data dive went, the clearer it became whatever happened after June 3rd wasn't recorded. Not by satellites, not by signals, not by code. And in a world where everything is always connected, that's not just rare, it's terrifying. The first official search launched 5 days after the Jeep was found. By then, the sun had baked every inch of earth where Zane and Alina might have walked. Black Rock Desert isn't kind to memory. Winds sweep away footprints in hours, tracks vanish, time liquefies in the heat. But still they looked. Search and rescue teams from Washoe and Humboldt counties arrived first. Drones, dogs, thermal imaging, helicopters scanned the scrub. Volunteers fanned out in grid patterns, combing every dry basin and ridgeline within a 10-mile radius. Nothing. No discarded water bottles, no fabric snagged on brush, no tire marks. Just wide, open silence. They focused on the route between the Jeep and the red circle on the map. A narrow cut through a series of dry gullies known as the Devil's Run, a place locals avoid. Not because of legend, but because of how fast things go wrong out there. Broken ankles, dust devils, disorientation. The kind of place that eats your compass and whispers bad advice. At one point, a ranger thought he spotted something, an indentation in the dust, shallow, oval, maybe a knee print, maybe wind. They marked it, photographed it, moved on. An hour later, it was gone. A bloodhound caught a weak scent trail that vanished near a patch of sunburnt rock. The handler swore it lingered there, spinning in circles before giving up. Like whoever it had followed had stopped cold and disappeared. On day 3, they searched the canyon west of the vehicle. A tight gorge known as Cutthroat Pass. Nothing. Day 4, they turned south toward the Salt Flats. Again nothing. No signs of shelter. No emergency fire rings. Not even vultures. Just the same heat, the same silence. After a week, morale dipped. The lead coordinator called it a case of total erasure. Every trail led nowhere. Every signal went dark, and the desert, as always, refused to explain itself. But some locals whispered differently. The desert doesn't forget, they said. It remembers everyone who walks into it. It just decides who it wants to keep. And something about Zane and Alina, whatever it washad, made the desert choose. It came from a gas station clerk in Gerlach. She didn't call it in right away, just mentioned it casually to a deputy who stopped for coffee on day 8 of the search. "I think I saw them," she said. "A couple, Jeep, but there was a third person with them." At first, no one paid much attention. Locals claimed to see things all the time: ghosts, aliens, drifters in mirrored sunglasses. But she was insistent. Said she remembered the woman clearly. Alina had complimented her earrings, and the man Zane was asking about roads near Fly Geyser. But it was the third one that stood out. Tall, hoodie up despite the heat, didn't speak. Just stood behind them near the tire air station. The couple didn't introduce him, didn't acknowledge him. But when they left, all 3 got into the Jeep. "He didn't sit in the back," she said. "He slid into the front passenger seat, like he belonged." She gave them water, watched them drive off. No plate number, but she remembered the color: desert tan, not gray like the one found. Maybe it had been coated in dust, maybe not the same car at all. The report made its way into the file, a note scribbled in the margin. Possible third party, unconfirmed. Fly Geyser sits on private land. Access is controlled. But a few years back, it was rumored to be a gathering site for off-grid communities, modern nomads, desert artists, and people who just wanted to disappear. Most dismissed the claim. No proof. No camps. Nothing on satellite. Still, the possibility lingered. The FBI briefly considered it. Was it possible Zane and Alina met someone out there, picked up a hitchhiker, or worse, were followed? But the tip was quietly shelved. No security footage, no matching vehicle logs. The clerk's statement was labeled unreliable. Memory degrades fast, especially when everyone wants to be part of a mystery. Still, the story stuck. A third person, not friend, not family, just a shadow in the heat. Some say every vanishing begins with a wrong decision. Others think it starts before that, with someone watching. And out in Black Rock, surrounded by silence, it doesn't take much for one shadow to become a threat. He was camped 23 miles from the nearest road, somewhere near the edge of the Quinn River Sink, off-grid by choice. Solar panels, a beat-up shortwave radio, and enough food to disappear for a month. His name was Nathan Rodessa, retired surveyor, who'd turned his back on the world after a bitter divorce. He wasn't looking for company, just sky, silence, the kind that stretches for hours. The transmission broke that silence. It crackled in on the 27 megahertz band, usually nothing but static and the occasional trucker drifting in from I-80. But this wasn't a trucker. It was weak, fragmented, a voice buried in white noise. He almost turned the dial until he caught the words. "They won't let us leave." Nathan froze, turned the volume up. The signal dipped, came back, then faded completely. No coordinates, no follow-up. Just that one sentence, spoken like a confession, not screamed, not panicked, just tired, worn down. He logged the time, 2:13 a.m., July 20. He marked the frequency, the atmospheric pressure, even the direction of the antenna. Years of mapping habits died hard. He scanned the bands for hours, hoping to catch a repeat. Nothing. When he finally reported it 3 days later after learning about the missing couple, the ranger at the check station just nodded and wrote it down. "Probably interference," he said. "Could have been anyone." But Nathan knew radio. He knew the range, the tone, the dead weight of words spoken too late. Whoever had said that hadn't been near a highway. They'd been close. And they'd wanted someone to hear them. The report was quietly filed. The signal source was never found. Too many canyons, too much interference, no triangulation. But those words stuck. "They won't let us leave." Not, "I'm lost," not, "send help." It sounded like the voice wasn't talking about the desert at all. It was talking about someone in it. The post lasted exactly 6 hours, long enough for 5 upvotes, 2 comments, and a screenshot that would circulate in fringe forums for months. Title: "Saw something in the Black Rock Desert, people in robes, fire, chanting." Posted under a throwaway account as deleted within the day. The body was short. Was hiking off trail near Fly Geyser. Around 3 a.m., saw a group on a ridge, maybe 10-15 people, long robes, standing in a circle around a fire. Looked like they were chanting or swaying, too far to hear clearly. No cell signal. Hiked back to camp, didn't sleep. The post was flagged and removed by moderators for unverified claims. But not before someone archived it. Nobody could trace the poster. The username at Thermal Visitor 320 was brand new. IP was masked through a VPN. Typical for Reddit, unusual for someone supposedly spooked enough to post at all. But the details caught people's attention, especially the part about robes and fire, and the fact that it was just days after Zane and Alina's Jeep was found. People started speculating. Was it connected to the Horizon Awakening? A rumored desert sect from the late 90s? A new Burning Man offshoot that had gone off script? Someone even tried matching the time and location with satellite imagery, but infrared scans showed nothing unusual, just sand, rock, heat. Still, in the corners of the internet where stories fester and bloom, the theories multiplied. Some said it was a hoax, others swore it was a warning. The timing was too close, the details too specific, the deleted account too convenient. But what unsettled people most wasn't what was said, it was what wasn't. No one ever came forward to claim the post. No follow-up, no explanation, just silence, like the account had been scrubbed from existence. And in Black Rock, that silence was starting to feel familiar. When the search turned quiet, Alina's sister, Camila Cruz, made sure the noise didn't stop. She wasn't the type to sit still. A trauma nurse from Oakland, used to pressure, blood, and impossible odds. But this was different. This was her sister. And the silence wasn't just frustrating, it was unbearable. She started with flyers, hundreds, posted across gas stations, campgrounds, diners, anywhere between Reno and Gerlach. Zane's photo on the left, Alina's on the right, the last selfie in the middle. Missing since June 3rd. She offered a 25-0 reward money she didn't have. Then came the interviews. Local news, NPR, a podcast called Lost Light picked up the story. She begged people to care. They didn't just vanish, she said into microphones. Someone saw something. We just need them to come forward. Some nights, she'd drive the desert roads herself, alone, a flashlight, a bag of their favorite snacks in the passenger seat. It was pointless. She knew that. But it gave her something to do. A direction. And when you're surrounded by nothing, direction matters. Authorities gave her the same line. They were doing all they could, but she could see it in their eyes, the shift, from rescue to recovery, from hope to paperwork. The report was now labeled inactive with pending leads. But Camila didn't back down. She set up a tip line, ran it from her own phone. She answered every call, every text. Most were garbage psychics, trolls, theories pulled from late-night YouTube spirals. But once in a while something felt close, a tone, a detail, something real. One message came in at 2:41 a.m., no caller ID, just a whisper. She wasn't supposed to bring him. Then silence. Camila replayed it 100 times, analyzed the waveform, ran it through enhancement software. Nothing more revealed, no accent, no background noise, but the words stuck, like a splinter under the skin. She forwarded it to the sheriff's department. They never called her back. So she kept going, tweeting, posting, appealing to anyone who might have passed through Black Rock in early June. She refused to say goodbye, not until someone gave her a reason. Because the worst part wasn't losing Alina. It was never being told why. The connection was made quietly. No press, no announcement. Just a memo passed between two federal investigators in a windowless office outside Reno. The subject line read, Black Rock Case, Cross, Reference Anomalies. Case B329. Zane Miller and Alina Cruz wasn't the first. In 2014, a father and daughter disappeared along the eastern edge of the playa. He was an amateur geologist. She was 12. Their truck was found abandoned near Soldier Meadows, doors locked, gear untouched. Drone footage showed no tracks beyond the vehicle. The case was never solved. In 2017, a documentary filmmaker researching desert legends vanished near Double Hot Springs. He was last seen interviewing a group of off-grid residents near Trago. His equipment was found in a motel room. His phone never resurfaced. Last recorded footage on his camera was of the open desert at night. Stars, wind, faint rhythmic drumming. No people, no voice. Both cases had been dismissed as isolated, probable accidents, disorientation, heat stroke, until now. The investigators began mapping timelines, weather patterns, lunar cycles. All 3 incidents occurred during the summer solstice window, all within 30 miles of each other. All near trails no longer marked on official maps, but one detail stood out most. All involved reports of groups unseen, unconfirmed, people in robes, fires, circles. In the geologist's case, a local ranch hand had mentioned strangers lighting torches near the ridge. It was ignored. In the filmmaker's notes, he'd written one cryptic line. They meet before the eclipse. No context, no source. Now, with Zane and Alina, it was harder to ignore. The phrase, "they won't let us leave," had taken on new weight. Maybe it wasn't desperation, maybe it was testimony. The memo ended with a suggestion. Crossfile with historical cult activity near Pyramid Lake. See 1996 and 2001 incidents. Monitor online forums for resurfaced chatter. But officially, nothing changed. The report was never made public. The connections were never confirmed. It stayed buried, just like the others. But those who read it, those still working the case, began using a new term behind closed doors. They stopped calling it a disappearance. They started calling it a pattern. It was supposed to be just another survey. On June 5th, 7 years to the week after Zane and Alina disappeared, two wildlife researchers were tracking migratory patterns in the northern quadrant of Black Rock. The area wasn't part of the usual route, but recent telemetry suggested a shift anomalous movement from a flock of tagged plovers. The terrain was harsh. No trail markers, no water, just wind and wide silence. They came upon the site by accident. From a distance, it looked like a natural rock formation, flat stones arranged in a shallow bowl. But as they got closer, the pattern emerged, a near-perfect circle. Inside it, scattered cloth, sun, bleached and tattered, faded blue denim, a boot partially buried in dust, and at the center, bones, human, arranged, not fallen, knees drawn up. Hands resting on thighs, skulls tilted slightly forward, like they were waiting for something. The researchers didn't speak, they just backed away and radioed it in. Within hours, the area was locked down. Rangers, forensics, anthropology consultants from the state university. The press wasn't alerted yet. What they'd found wasn't just a body dump. It was deliberate, ritualistic. Nothing about it felt accidental. Initial analysis confirmed the bones belonged to two adult-owned male, one female. DNA would take weeks, but the clothing tags were still legible. One read, Miller, SF. The other, stitched inside a torn canvas jacket, Cruz. Zane and Alina had been found. Not buried, not hidden. Seated. Inside a circle someone had built. Charred remains of wood were nearby, half crumbled, ash soaked into the ground, undisturbed for years. Everything else, the stones, the bones, the arrangement had remained untouched, protected somehow, as if no wind had dared to cross the boundary. One of the researchers noted something strange. The birds, the ones they were tracking, were nesting all around the site. Dozens of them, quiet, unbothered, as if the place didn't frighten them, as if they belonged there. The site had no road leading in, no signs of human traffic, and yet whoever had brought them here did so without leaving a single trace. It took 7 years to find them, but somehow it felt like they had been waiting all along. The circle measured 11 feet across. 34 stones, evenly spaced. Most were smooth river rock, not native to the area. Each bore small carvings etched by hand, symbols that didn't match any known language. Some resembled eyes, others spirals. One was a perfect equilateral triangle, scorched at the corners. At the center, Zane and Alina sat side by side, or what was left of them. Their skeletal frames leaned slightly forward, as though listening. Alina's hands were folded in her lap. Zane's arms rested at his sides, fingers curled inward. Their posture wasn't collapsed. It was maintained, set. Even in death, there was intention. Around them, the soil was stained with old ash. Someone had built a fire there, several, based on the depth of the burn. Charcoal flakes still embedded in the sediment. Bits of bone too small to match either body, not animal, human, maybe others. Flat rocks lined the circle floor, each blackened at one edge. A forensic tech flipped one over and found a sigil burned into the underside, a symbol no one could translate. The edges were still sharp, like it had been branded. No signs of struggle, no blood, no restraints, just that impossible calm. Their clothing had weathered with time, but fragments clung stubbornly to bone. A zipper here, a braid of faded hemp cord wrapped around Alina's wrist, one hiking sock still whole. Nothing had been looted, no valuables taken, not even the rings Zane had worn on his right hand. The site wasn't vandalized, it was preserved. A ranger noted the direction the bodies faced, east, toward the rising sun. The alignment wasn't random, it matched the solar charts for the summer solstice. The same alignment noted in 2 of the earlier disappearances. And then there was the silence. No insects, no birdsong, not even wind, just the low hum of distant heat. It felt like a place between things. Not quite grave, not quite shrine. Investigators left markers, photographed everything, removed nothing, at least not yet. Some argued for excavation, Others said, "Wait." The lead ranger just stood at the edge of the circle and whispered, "Whatever this was, it's not over." Because the way they sat their faces to the horizon, unmoving, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a message. The results came back 5 days later. Dental records from Zane's last cleaning at a San Francisco clinic matched the molars found on the male skeleton. Alina's records, cross-checked with her orthodontist from high school, matched a set of uniquely rotated incisors. The IDs were conclusive. Official. The press release was 1 paragraph long. The remains discovered in Black Rock Desert have been positively identified as Zane Miller and Alina Cruz, missing since June 3, 2016. The investigation remains ongoing. No mention of the circle, no mention of how they were found. Camila got the call at 2:43 p.m. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. She just sat on the floor, phone still in her hand, as if the news hadn't hit her body yet. She said later it was worse than death, because for 7 years she'd hoped. Not that they were alive, but that if they were gone, it had been quick, kind, clean. This wasn't that. The posture was what haunted her most, seated, side by side, as if they'd been told where to sit and they listened, as if they'd waited for something together. Investigators noted the position too. Neither body showed signs of restraint, no trauma, no broken bones, no defensive wounds. If there was pain, it hadn't left a mark. Their gaze locked toward the horizon suggested they'd been placed deliberately, or they had chosen that direction themselves. Sunrise alignment wasn't uncommon in burial traditions, but this wasn't burial. There was no earth piled over them, no coffin, just exposure, full view, like the sun was meant to see them. Questions piled up faster than answers. If they died there, who built the circle? Who arranged them? Who made sure nothing disturbed them for 7 years? And why had no one found them sooner? The region wasn't mapped, not for hikers, not for vehicles. It didn't lead anywhere. Except this perfect circle in a place no one should have been. Confirmation should have brought closure. But instead, it opened a new chapter, one where death wasn't the mystery. It was the intention behind it. The fire hadn't been for warmth. That was the first thing the forensic team agreed on. The pattern didn't match a survival fire. It was small, contained, centered precisely between the two bodies, burned low and long. No branches scattered, no evidence of kindling collected from the surrounding brush. Whoever lit it had prepared for this. Carbon traces showed it had burned at least twice once, shortly after placement of the bodies, and again several days later. Same position, same intensity, as if someone had returned or planned it that way. The ash formed a crescent on the west edge of the stone floor, curving gently around Alina's left hand. No wind disturbance, no scatter. It had burned clean. Embedded in the ash, lab techs found fragments, small animal bones, most likely rabbit, charcoal, what appeared to be petals-dried remnants of desert marigold, common in rituals. One blackened feather. And something that didn't belong. A strip of leather, braided, etched with tiny symbols too fine to translate. It hadn't burned fully, just singed along the edge, like it had been placed after the second fire, or protected deliberately. Further analysis revealed faint traces of human fat in the surrounding rock, an indicator of cremation, though not from Zane or Alina. Their bodies hadn't burned, they had weathered, which meant someone else had burned there, or something had been offered. The fire's symmetry was unsettling. A triangle of scorched stones radiated outward from the center. The triangle pointed east, same as the bodies. Investigators marked each stone, each scorch, each alignment. One agent called it a staging, another called it a performance. But no one said what they were really thinking. It looked like a ritual. Not in a vague cinematic way, but in the way that felt practiced, rehearsed, measured. This wasn't random, it was reenacted, twice, maybe more. The site wasn't just a resting place, it was an altar. The burn pattern didn't tell how Zane and Alina died, but it revealed what came after, and it hinted quietly, unmistakably that someone was still tending the fire. They found it 2 days into the excavation, buried 6 inches beneath a flat stone near the edge of the circle. A rusted tin box, no larger than a lunch container, sealed with melted wax around the rim. One of the rangers almost missed it, assuming it was debris. But when they pried it, open gloves on, breath held it wasn't trash. It was a journal, wrapped in canvas. The first page folded and brittle, but legible. Z.M., written in blocky, slanted ink. Zane Miller, dated May 28, 2016. Forensics passed it to the investigative team. They took photos of every page before even turning them. The ink had faded, but the handwriting was clear, tight loops, steady pressure. Zane had always been methodical, even in fear, apparently. The entries weren't typical diary fare. No feelings, no nostalgia, just observations, directions, names. The first half read like a travel log, notes about road conditions, supplies, temperature drops at night, mentions of elevations and marked stones. Then it changed. Midway through, the tone shifted. He started referring to them. They met us by the ridge, silent, watching. Alina didn't want to follow. I convinced her. Later entries grew fragmented. She sleeps easier now. They said we have to walk light, let go of what weighs. No mirrors, no clocks, just light. He spoke about the circle before it was built, about dreams repeating patterns, waking with dust in his mouth. He started counting days by the sun, not by dates. And then one line, scribbled between 2 entries, almost like it wasn't meant to be read. The fire will open it. It wasn't clear what it meant. The final page was dated June 20. One day before the selfie, it simply read, "They say it's time. She's ready. I'm not, but I will be." After that, nothing. The journal was bagged, logged, and copied. But for the team at the site, something had changed. They weren't just working a cold case anymore. They were standing in the middle of a decision someone made 7 years ago. One he wrote down in a notebook, sealed in tin and buried beneath stone. Because Zane Miller hadn't wandered into this. He'd walked into it with purpose. The phrase appeared 3 times in the journal. The Horizon Awakening. At first, it sounded like something poetic, but when analysts ran it through databases, something flickered. A name buried in old message boards, obscure forum posts, desert survival subthreads from the early 2000s. It wasn't a brand, it wasn't a metaphor. It was a group. Unofficial, unregistered, no founding documents, but there were fragments first-person stories that blurred between memory and myth. A woman in 2004 wrote, "They live where the roads don't go. They take your name. You face the sun." Another post claimed, "They only meet near the solstice. Silence is their prayer." Zane's journal confirmed it. He mentioned the name directly. The Horizon Awakening invited us, said we were chosen, said the eclipse would cleanse what the world had infected. Another page described their beliefs in more detail. Purification through isolation, disconnection from the mechanical world, alignment with the sun rising, and satingas, a way to realign the soul. It sounded like spiritual minimalism, but then the entries darkened. We eat in halves, speak only in dreams. To be seen, you must be empty. They say the next alignment will burn away what's left. There was mention of a ritual, something called the seated rite. It was never defined, just referenced, again and again, like a destination. The FBI team began combing the archives. Old reports, unsolved disappearances near Pyramid Lake. A survivalist named Owen Mercer had gone missing in 1997 after claiming he was walking east to be reborn. His last known email mentioned a light that knows your name, and then a strange detail. In 2012, a burnout van had been found 40 miles south of the same region. Inside, melted candles. Charcoal drawings of human figures facing the sun. The incident was never followed up. Now, everything pointed back to this, to something nameless, something practiced, something that didn't just exist once but kept resurfacing in whispers, in ashes, in patterns that only made sense from far away. The Horizon Awakening wasn't a myth. It was a system, and Zane and Alina hadn't just found it. They had followed it, all the way to the end. His name was Elijah Roone, or at least that's what he went by. Public records traced his real name to Richard Elms, born in Ohio in 1962, but sometime around 1998 he vanished from the grid. No tax filings, no credit history. Just a new name whispered in fringe forums and whispered even quieter in Nevada towns that backed up to too much dust. Elijah Roone founded a group called The Path of the Horizon. Not a religion, not legally. No sermons, no buildings. Just a mailing list, meetups, and a collection of loosely printed guides on solar initiation, ritual disconnection, and cycle cleansing. The materials weren't illegal, but they weren't benign either. What set him apart wasn't just the content, it was the geography. He held retreats near Gerlikoff Trail, hikes deep into Black Rock, groups of 10 or fewer, always timed with eclipses, solstices, or equinoxes. Participants were encouraged to leave behind ID, phones, even surnames. They weren't vanishing, they were unbecoming. By 2009, authorities started paying attention. A 22-year-old woman returned from one of Roone's retreats emaciated, disoriented, and unable to speak for days. She claimed the Watchers had chosen her, then changed her mind. No charges were filed. She refused to name anyone. Then, in 2014, Elijah Roone himself disappeared. He was last seen leaving a gas station east of Nixon, NV, headed toward the desert with 2 followers. Neither was ever identified. His car was found abandoned 3 weeks later, keys in the ignition, windshield covered in red sand. That was the last trace of him. Until now. Zane's journal referenced the speaker in white, always in lowercase, no name, but the descriptions matched. He spoke with light behind his eyes. She trusts him. I'm still learning. He says the right will hold if we listen. Forensic linguists compared the writing in the journal to Roone's published materials. Phrasing overlapped, the cadence, the way the word stillness was used like punctuation. No one said it aloud, but the implication hovered like static. If Elijah Roone was alive, he hadn't gone silent. He'd gone deeper. And the circle where Zane and Alina were found? It wasn't new. It was part of something he'd started decades before. It was almost missed. The analyst reviewing archive data wasn't looking for people. He was checking erosion patterns for a Bureau of Land Management requisitold satellite passes, dusty files from the National Geospatial Intelligence Archive. But on a scan dated June 4, 2016, he paused. It was subtle. A darkened ring, 11 feet wide, in a part of the desert that had no reason to be disturbed. The coordinates matched exactly. He flagged the image and ran enhancement protocols. The burn pattern appeared faint but symmetrical, radiating lines, a shape too precise to be geological. Another scan, taken the following evening, showed it again. This time, brighter. Thermal spikes clustered around the ring, small, brief heat signatures. Not enough to identify people, but enough to suggest presence. Movement, fire, bodies. No flights had passed overhead that weekend. No agencies had flagged anything unusual. But there it was, on satellite. Captured quietly, anonymously, above a patch of earth where 2 people were vanishing while the rest of the world was looking the other way. Investigators cross-referenced the time with the known progression of the summer solstice. June 4th was the midpoint, the day the sun reaches its highest, lingers, and begins to fall again. The satellite passed at 6:19 p.m., the exact moment the sun would have aligned with the eastern edge of the circle. The photos weren't proof, they didn't show faces, but they told a story, one of gathering, of design, of something that wasn't supposed to be recorded but was anyway by accident, by orbit, by a machine that didn't know it had captured the final minutes of 2 people following a faith no one could name. The frames from that pass were compiled and sent to every active field agent on the case. No leaks, no press. Just a silent shift in the way the case was now spoken about. This wasn't two people lost in the desert. This was an event. One that had been planned, orchestrated, witnessed and almost forgotten. But the satellites saw it. And now, so had they. It was buried near the end of the journal, tucked between fragmented thoughts and barely legible sketches, a page so warped by sweat or weather it had fused to the one behind it. When archivists finally separated them, it changed everything. At the top, Zane had written, "The seated right, final entry." Below that, a list. No introduction, no explanation, just short lines, bullet-pointed and tight. Fast begins 10 days prior. Fire prep. Day 5. No names past day 3. Last voice sunset before eclipse. Sit east, spine straight, hands open. Burn, at midpoint. Remain still. There were notes in the margin, circles drawn around midpoint. A crude diagram of the sun's arc over a stone circle, arrows aligning with the horizon. He'd written coordinates that matched the exact location where they were found. But the date July 20, 2016 was the key. A partial eclipse had passed over Nevada that evening. Not full, but enough for the sky to shift, enough for believers to see a sign. Zane had tracked it, mapped it, counted backwards to align their movements with the celestial shadow. The seated right wasn't metaphor, it was a ritual, structured, timed, meant to begin before the eclipse and end in silence facing the first light after it passed. The posture they were found in upright, hands resting, eyes toward the horizon wasn't collapse. It was instruction. Zane hadn't documented fear, he documented preparation, acceptance. Like this was always the goal. Still, the pages hinted at conflict. Alina appeared less often near the end. He mentioned her in fragments. She hesitates. She asked what comes next. She said no more waiting. Then one final note. Scribbled, faded, barely legible. We sit for the fire, we stay for the return. Return of what? No one could say. But when investigators laid out the pages in sequence, the timeline was undeniable. They hadn't stumbled into a trap. They had followed steps. Built the fire, faced the sun, sat down, and waited for something the rest of the world would never see. Alina's parents refused to read the journal. They were shown photos, told of the fire, the ritual, the group Zane had written about, but none of it made sense to them. None of it matched who their daughter was. She was spiritual, her mother said. She believed in energy, in healing, but not in this. Her father agreed. Alina did yoga. She meditated. She read books about intuition and light. But a cult? Starvation? Sitting until death? No, that wasn't her. They remembered her laughter, her love for music, the way she used to hum while painting. They refused to believe she would follow someone into the desert to die. It wasn't just painful, it was offensive. Like the person they had known had been erased and replaced by someone else's story. Camila tried to bridge the gap. She'd read the journal, seen the changes in tone, the way Zane's words had started to overtake Alina's presence on the page. Her sister's voice had faded, slowly. Maybe she didn't want this, Camila offered. Then why didn't she leave? Her mother asked. And that was the question none of them could answer. The site photos were never shown to them in full. Just the facts, the confirmation, the silence. But in the back of their minds, they imagined worse. What else had happened? What hadn't the investigators said? The word cult followed every conversation like a shadow, a shape that didn't belong. Reporters mentioned it, podcasts ran with it, forums exploded with theories. But to Alina's parents, their daughter wasn't a follower. She didn't chant, she didn't burn offerings, she didn't write symbols into stone, and most importantly, she didn't give up. She had plans, her father whispered once. She was coming home. In some ways, they were right. The woman who smiled in their kitchen on Memorial Day weekend wasn't the same woman who sat in that circle weeks later. Something changed. Gradually. Quietly. Whether it was belief, coercion, or surrender, no one would ever know. But the hardest truth was also the simplest. Alina had made it all the way to the fire and never came back. They found it by accident. 12 miles southeast of the Stone Circle, near an abandoned service road overrun by sagebrush, a search team spotted scorched metal through the heat shimmer. At first, they thought it was a flipped trailer. But as they got closer, the shape resolved a camper van. Melted, charred black, every window gone. The rubber tires fused to the earth. Nothing around it was burned. No signs of wildfire. Just the vehicle, like it had ignited from the inside out. Inside, the heat had warped everything. Shelves collapsed. A mattress reduced to springs and ash. The air reeked of wax and chemicals. In the center of the floor, a metal tripodonce, a camera mount now, sagged inward, twisted by heat. Scattered nearby were melted lenses. Film canisters bubbled and cracked. No footage survived. What caught their attention most were the candles. Black, dozens of them, lined in rows across the back panel, arranged in a spiral pattern now obscured by soot. Some had symbols carved into their sides matching the stones at the ritual site. Whatever happened in this van wasn't recreational, it was ceremonial. In the glove compartment, they found a notebook. The cover was scorched but intact. Inside, a list, handwritten in smudged ink. No title, just names. 8 of them, some first and last, others only initials. And beside 4 of them, a single mark drawn in red, an X. The notebook was bagged, cataloged, and cross-referenced. No ID was found in the van, no registration. The VIN had been filed off, the plates removed. Whoever drove it didn't want it traced. And whoever left it didn't expect it to be found. The burn pattern suggested an accelerant had been used, but not in panic. It was too clean, too focused, no spatter, no explosion, just heat-contained, deliberate. The working theory was it had been torched after use, a mobile base for something more elaborate, maybe even a camera crew. But there was no documentation, no audio gear, just melted frames, burnt wax. Names. And for the team already neck-deep in symbols and vanished people, this wasn't new data. It was confirmation. Someone had come prepared, not just to observe, but to remember. The names weren't just random. When investigators ran them against missing persons databases from the summer of 2016, 4 stood out, all filed between June and August, all from the western U.S. None had ever been found. Holland Baker, 25, Portland. Freelance photographer, last seen headed to Gerlach to document the solstice, texted a friend. I found something wild out here. No signal after this. Mira Caldwell, 32, Santa Fe. Known for her work in desert installations, vanished after a road trip north with an unknown male companion. Her last credit card charge was for gas just outside Empire, Nevada. A.J. Teller, 21, no fixed address. Had posted in survival forums about joining the Sun Watchers, claimed he'd been invited. Last IP pinged from a public library in Reno. E.K. Only initials were written on the list. But one case matched. Elise Kavanaugh, 29, from Fresno, known traveler. Family said she'd been chasing spiritual communities for years. Her last postcard home read, "The desert is more alive than anyone knows." All 4 had been considered low-priority vanishings. Adults, no signs of foul play. Most had lifestyle markers that made law enforcement hesitate. Wanderers, nomads, off-grid tendencies. But now their names were on a list inside a burned van, found near a death site no one should have known existed. The X beside their names was never explained. None of the remaining 4 had clear connections to each other. No social overlap, no shared addresses. But all had posted at some point under aliases or usernameson, a private online forum called Solstice Path. It had been inactive since 2017, shut down without warning, data wiped. Except for an archived page investigators found cached. A thread titled, "The Circle Holds 8. No responses, no timestamps, just the body text. They sit in pairs, 4 sets, north, south, east, west, 1 fire to bind, 1 right to close, 1 shadow to keep the path. Zane and Alina were east-facing, that much was confirmed. But now, investigators had to ask, where were the other 3 circles? And what happened to the other 6? His name was Royce Tiller, third-generation cattle rancher, owned 200 acres that stretched out toward the Black Rock's southern ridges. The land was dry, cracked, mostly unforgiving, but it was his. He'd lived there since 1980, never had a reason to leave. In late summer of 2016, he started hearing things. At first, he thought it was wind, low vibrations rolling off the canyon walls, the way the land sometimes moaned when it got too hot. But this was different, rhythmic, timed, like syllables stretched over breath. He described it as murmurs from the earth. It always started around dusk. Like church music, he told the investigator, but not in English, not in anything I could place. He never saw anyone, never caught a truck passing the back fence. But the sounds returned same time every evening for nearly 3 weeks. Low, patient, like breathing, wrapped in melody. His dogs wouldn't go near the ridgeline during that time. They'd whine, stand still. One night they barked so fiercely he fired off a round, convinced someone was trespassing. But the land stayed empty. After the 3rd week, the sounds stopped, just like that. No fade, no warning. And Royce didn't think about it again until 2023, when an officer came asking questions about missing people and strange gatherings. He brought the story up casually, like it wasn't strange, like weird things just happened in the desert sometimes. But when they showed him a map and asked where he'd heard the sounds most clearly, he pointed without hesitation. Less than 5 miles from Zane and Alina's site. He wasn't a man of tall tales. No interest in podcasts, cults, or online conspiracies. He wasn't even sure who Zane and Alina were until the case resurfaced. But he knew what he heard. They weren't shouting, he said. It wasn't chaos. It was practiced. Investigators took a recorder back to the site and played ambient tracks at different volumes, ritual chants, temple drones, plainsong echoes, but Royce shook his head each time. No, it wasn't like that, he said. It wasn't loud. It was like it was meant only for the dirt to hear. And when they left, he stood at the edge of his property, watching the horizon, waiting to hear if it ever came back. The photo had been online for 6 years before anyone noticed. It was posted on a travel blog by a woman named Serena Park, July 2017, 1 year after the disappearances. She'd been hiking the High Rock Canyon Trail and caught the sunset in a wide-angle shot, hazy light, orange dust, her silhouette framed in the corner. She captioned it, "Endless Light, Nevada Magic." It would have gone unnoticed forever, if not for a Reddit thread, months into the reopened investigation, where someone linked the image with a single comment. Look behind her, left corner. At first, it just looked like another rock formation, but when zoomed in, sharpened, the shape took on definition. A figure, standing completely still, draped in white. The robe reached the ground, sleeves loose at the wrists. The garment glowed against the dusk. Not reflective, just impossibly bright for that hour. The head was slightly bowed, hands folded. No facial features visible, but the posture matched what Zane had described in his journal. The speaker in white, he waits near the light. The photo was time-stamped. July 20, 2017, 6:22 p.m. Exactly 1 year to the date and, nearly to the minute, of the seated right. Serena had no idea she'd captured anything unusual. When contacted, she was rattled. Said she remembered feeling uneasy at that part of the trail. Said she thought she saw someone far off but didn't want to seem paranoid. No one else had been logged on the trail that day. The park's motion sensor logs showed no registered traffic. The heat signature had blended with the landscape. No drone data, no satellite coverage, just one accidental photo of a figure no one could explain. Forensics ruled out a costume. The folds of the fabric were too intricate, the light too natural. The figure wasn't added later, it was there, just unnoticed. Until now. The FBI asked for more photos from that day. Serena had taken 12. 11 of them showed nothing, but in the final one, snapped seconds later, the figure was gone. No footprints, no movement. Just empty rock. And the light still glowing like it had remembered someone standing there. She didn't give her real name. Said to call her Ray, mid-30s, quiet voice. Wore a scarf that covered her face from the nose down. Even in the interview, she never took off her sunglasses. Claimed she wasn't hiding from law enforcement, she was hiding from them. The Horizon Awakening. She said she joined in early 2016, not as a believer, but as someone searching. I was broken, she said. I thought I needed stillness. They promised it. She found them through an online forum gone now where people spoke in metaphors more than facts. Phrases like open light, path of forgetting, and the circle hears. She was contacted directly. Given coordinates, told to bring only what she could carry in one bag. They met her in silence. 10 people, all robed, no names exchanged, just a gesture fingers to lips, then pointing east. That's how it started. She spent 3 weeks with them. They slept in arranged patterns, 8 small rations, no mirrors, no electronics. Every movement was deliberate. Every night they chanted not loudly but softly, like they were humming a secret the earth already knew. The man in white oversaw everything. She never heard him speak, but he watched, constantly. When asked about Zane and Alina, she nodded slowly. I remember her, Alina. She asked questions, more than the rest of us. She said there were 8 selected for the seated right, paired by ritual. None were told how it would end, only that it was the closing. Some left before the final week. She said she tried to too. They don't chain you, she said. You leave on your own feet or you don't. One night, she did. She walked into the dark with nothing but a canteen and a rusted compass. It took her 4 days to reach a back road. She hitchhiked to a town and never told a soul what she'd seen. Until now. I saw what they do, she said. It's not murder, it's surrender, and they think they're giving you a gift. She paused. But it's a gift wrapped in silence, and once you sit, there's no coming back. It happened without warning. One morning in early fall, hikers heading toward the northern flats found new signs posted bright yellow, staked deep into the sand. Federal property. Do not enter, trespassing punishable by law. By the afternoon, a temporary fence had gone up. Chain link, 8 feet high, no barbed wire. But it didn't need to be. The message was clear. The site where Zane and Alina had been found along with the remains of the fire, the stone circle, and the surrounding burn patterns was now officially sealed. No statement was made to the public. No press briefings. Just a quiet shift in jurisdiction, from local to federal. The town sheriff's department was no longer in charge. Bureau agents took over, their badges unnamed, their vehicles unmarked. Within 48 hours, a mobile command unit arrived. Cameras were disassembled, soil samples removed. What little vegetation had survived was scraped clear. Every footprint, every trace, collected. Even the stones were tagged. A drone captured footage from above the fence. The image showed the site from a bird's-eye view for the first time, revealing the full symmetry. 4 long trails extending outward from the center like spokes. East, west, north, south. Only one had been occupied. The others, waiting. Locals whispered about the change. Truckers avoided the back roads. Ranchers who'd grazed near the area for decades shifted their routes. Something about the quiet had become heavier. Camila tried to visit. Drove out with a bouquet of sunflowers. Was turned away without a word. One of the agents just stood in front of the gate, arms crossed. No access, he said. This is closed. Why? She asked. He didn't answer. Reporters filed FOIA requests. All were denied, citing ongoing investigation. When pressed further, a single line appeared in the rejection letter. Sensitive site related to national safety. That phrasing hadn't been used since the Cold War. Whatever had happened there, whatever was still unfolding, was no longer a missing persons case. It was a sealed event, a site cut off from the public, from truth, from memory. And beyond the fence, the desert waited. The circle remained. Empty, marked, and far from finished. It's been nearly a decade, but the sky is about to darken again. On the forums that had once gone dark places like Solstice Path, Desert Echo, and now encrypted threads on newer platforms, the chatter has returned. New usernames, old symbols, and the same question pulsing through every post. Will the Horizon Awakening rise again? Another eclipse is coming, this one more complete. A totality that will pass directly over parts of the western desert, its shadow sweeping across black rock like a long-forgotten scar being reopened. The parallels are impossible to ignore. Date, July 20. Time, near 6:20 p.m. Coordinates, aligned again. Even accounts that had been dormant for years, some inactive since 2016, began posting cryptic phrases, ritual terms, a few shared grainy maps. Others offered meetup points, always vague, always east-facing. One user wrote, "The circle only sleeps between shadows." Another, "The light remembers the way. Sit again." Authorities monitored the boards quietly, flagged IPs, cross-referenced handles. But nothing direct, no threats, no coordinates that could be confirmed, just suggestion, rumor, and a growing hum of anticipation. The Bureau reactivated its internal file on the Horizon Awakening. Surveillance satellites were repositioned. Local law enforcement briefed again, this time with more urgency. But still, no public alerts, no warnings. Because officially, nothing had ever happened. The van had burned. The couple had died. The site was sealed. And yet, the pattern continued. Even Camila felt it. She'd moved to Portland, built a quieter life, tried to forget the endless heat and the unanswered questions. But when she saw the eclipse date flash across her newsfeed, something inside her froze. She still had her sister's photo on the wall, still kept the voicemail she never deleted. And as the sun prepared to vanish once more, she whispered to herself a question she hadn't dared ask in years. What if someone else is sitting now? The sky has turned this way before. And if the pattern holds, if the rites were more than coincidence, then the silence that followed Zane and Alina wasn't an end. It was a beginning. It was written in pencil, the line light, almost as if he'd hesitated to commit it to the page. The final entry in the journal tucked behind a blank sheet, folded once, like a secret he wasn't sure anyone should find. "She's ready. The light will take her. I will follow." The words carried none of the panic that marked his early entries. No questions, no doubts, just a flat acceptance, a kind of surrender that didn't beg to be understood. For days, analysts had debated the tone. Some said it was devotion. Others thought it sounded programmed, like something he'd been taught to repeat until it became truth. But what struck everyone the same was this. It wasn't about him. It was about her. All through the journal, Alina was his anchor, the one who hesitated, the one who questioned. And here at the end, Zane wrote as if her transformation was complete, as if she'd crossed a threshold he had only just approached. And then the second sentence, "I will follow." Not "we'll go together." Not "we've chosen this." Just that, "I will follow." As if he wasn't leading anything, as if she had already gone ahead. Investigators debated whether that meant she'd died first, or if she had simply accepted something faster. A state of mind, a ritual, a role in the circle that Zane hadn't understood until it was too late. The handwriting matched earlier entries, but the pressure had changed, lighter, slower, as if his hand had trembled or the fire had grown close. Some think he wrote it after the fire was lit. Others think he never meant it to be found at all. But the fact remains, it was the last thing he ever wrote. And whether it was a confession, a prophecy, or a goodbye, no one can say for sure. Only that the words endured. Scorched, folded, faded, but still legible. Still waiting. Like everything else out there beneath the sky that once turned dark and may yet again. They were finally brought home. After years of silence, speculation, and sealed reports, Zane Miller and Alina Cruz were laid to rest side by side in a small cemetery just outside San Francisco. A modest service. Closed caskets. Dozens attended, but none spoke publicly. Not even Camila. The markers were simple, granite, unpolished. Zane's read, "He followed the light." Alina's, "She loved the sky." Their parents chose the inscriptions, not from the journal, not from memory, just words they could live with. Words that didn't hint at fires or rites or anything that might stain the last image they had of their children before they vanished. The press respected the moment for a day. Then the stories started. Anonymous posts, leaked photos, rumors spreading like smoke across fringe forums and local bars. Not about the service, but about what hadn't made it into the ground. One thread claimed the bodies weren't whole, that parts were missing. Another claimed the remains were too preserved for 7 years in the open. A third, posted under a familiar username from a deleted account, simply read, "They're not done." But the most persistent rumor didn't come from the internet. It came from Black Rock. Campers, hikers, locals, all said the same thing: the desert hadn't gone quiet. Low sounds at dusk, flickers of white cloth, circles of footprints that hadn't been there the day before, and always someone standing just at the edge of sight, watching. Some say Zane and Alina were only the beginning, that they completed something old, or awakened something older. Others believe they're still there, not as spirits, exactly, but as echoes. "The light took them," one post read, "but the ground kept their names." Camila visited the grave once, placed a sunflower between the stones, then walked away without saying a word. She never returned. The families wanted closure, but the desert doesn't close. It opens. And what it opens to doesn't always let go. The last shot was captured by drone. Commissioned by an independent documentarian, it was meant to be the closing Imagen overhead view of the infamous stone circle. The drone lifted into the air, camera panning wide over the endless ripple of sand and rock. The circle appeared just as it had in every archived photo, perfectly round, stones scorched and still, the center bare, empty. But this time, something was different. For a moment only, a few frames of faint disturbance shimmered across the screen, like heat or static. Then from the right side of the frame, a shape, a figure, barely visible, clothed in white, not running, not hiding, just standing, still as the stones, watching. It stepped forward. 1 pace. 2. And then, just before the drone could shift, focus vanished. No blur, no movement, just gone, like it had never been there at all. Analysts reviewed the footage dozens of times, enhanced, slowed, stabilized, but nothing explained it. The shadow didn't match any known object. The height tall, thin, suggested adult male, but with no visible face or details, just white against the desert's gold. The shot was never aired. Not officially. But it leaked. And those who saw it didn't debate what it was. They debated what it meant. Because if the site was empty, if the fire was out, and if the rites had ended, why was someone still watching? And more importantly, who? The camera's final frame froze on the full circle, the sand untouched, the stones quiet. But in the silence, the wind stirred. Not loud, just enough to carry a sound. Low, rhythmic, almost like breathing, then static, then black. The circle remains. And somewhere, just beyond the edge of sight, the desert waits. This story was intense. But this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.